Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We've been talking about nutrients through the fall and winter, and one of the micronutrients that really is misunderstood is boron. People are nervous about putting too much boron on because they've heard bad things if you get too much, but you certainly need a good amount of boron if you want to have good yields. We'll talk about exactly what you need to know for boron on your farm.
Well, we also want to get specific with wheat today and talk about early season diseases and insects and how you can stop those in your wheat, when it's worth it and when it's not, to take care of those problems.
Well, one big problem you do need to take care of is our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this weed later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about why farmers use seed treatments.
First of all, what is a seed treatment? When we think about that, let's just use soybeans as an example. So a farmer is going to plant soybeans. He's going to place that seed down an inch or an inch and a half deep in the soil. There are a lot of diseases in the soil. There are a lot of insects in the soil that want to feed on that soybean seed. So what farmers can do is treat that seed or coat that seed with either a liquid or a dry seed treatment. Now, if a farmer is using a dry seed treatment, he wants a powder that's going to stick pretty well to the seed. Or if he's using a liquid seed treatment, he's going to want a liquid that can coat around that seed and then dry relatively quickly. If the seed is still wet, it's not very plantable for the farmer. It won't flow through his seeder very well. So he needs that to be dry. So a farmer could use a liquid or a dry coating on the seed, and that coating may consist of any number of things.
All right, let's talk about those number of things it may consist of. The most important thing is usually fungicide, and it's typically not just one fungicide, it's 2 or 3 fungicides. And I don't care if we're talking corn, soybeans, wheat, or almost any seed out there, you're going to find that in today's world, with all those diseases we've got to fight, and a lot of times planting into cold, wet soils, we have multiple fungicides on there, usually 3.
The next piece of the equation is generally insecticide. Now, depending on which crop a farmer may be planting, there could be different insects that want to feed on that particular seed, but the family of insecticides being used in most crops across the country is the same. It's the neonicotinoid family of insecticides. So it's actually a relative of the nicotine that may be in cigarettes or chewing tobacco, and it's actually a pretty good insecticide. So it's relatively safe for humans to use at extremely low doses, of course, but it's very deadly to some insects that could harm our seed before it can get out of the ground or very early in the season.
The other nice thing with these insecticides, and for some of the fungicides as well, they not only protect the seed, they protect the young seedling because they are systemic. So that's a big advantage that some of these newer seed treatments have versus what we used to have 20 years ago. Okay, so in addition to fungicide and insecticide, you might also see what we would call biological products, natural products, bacteria, fungi, and the like. For example, inoculant in soybeans, that's live bacteria that helps the soybean plant produce its own nitrogen. There are things like quick roots, for example, that's beneficial bacteria and fungi that attach themselves to roots and basically extend the root system of the plant, helping bring in more water and nutrients. There are a number of new advances in these biological products, or as I like to refer to them, natural products. You're going to see many more of those coming down the road.
Well, and even one that's been out here just for a couple of years now is one called Chloriva that can actually stop nematodes and feed on nematodes that could be hurting our crops. You can put that right on the seed for protection.
All right, in addition to some of these other things that, they have definite benefit for the crop, there are things like polymers to coat the seed, to lock in the seed treatments, and maybe help with the flowability of the seed. They may help the appearance of the seed. So there are a number of these other types of things that are getting thrown on there too, colorants even. So the seed might be red or green, or who knows, it could be purple or pink or whatever color that the company happens to choose. But the point is, farmers are using seed treatments for a number of different methods, a number of different purposes out there on the farm, and they are very beneficial and they're also pretty inexpensive in most cases, which is why you see so much use of these products in all crops.
Well, seed treatments are great for protecting that seed, but they don't do anything to stop our Weed of the Week. We'll show you what can control this weed coming up later in the show.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
When you need one machine that can do it all, you send in a Spartan, your all-in-one forage solution from Capello, USA. This direct cutting system is the right machine for almost any forage crop and gets everything done in a single pass, keeps your costs down. Always versatile, the Spartan can be configured to fit any self-propelled forage harvester in the world. So, no matter what you forage, send in a Spartan from Capello, USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Stop coring your bins with the AgriDry Gravity Grain Spreader. Traditional bin filling systems create uneven concentrations of grain and fine particulates. Uniform grain distribution allows even airflow throughout the entire bin, giving you more control over temperature and moisture content, increasing your grain quality and bottom line. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
As weed resistance becomes more of a problem across the country, your crop protection program needs to stay flexible to be effective. Hypro Innovative Spray Technology's wide selection of spray tips and nozzle configurations are available to keep your crop protection program right on technology, right on target.
One of the disadvantages that we believe the wheat crop has is if you compare it to corn and soybeans, there's so much good early growth. It just seems like it traps a lot of moisture, which right away sounds good. But the problem with that is we see more early season diseases and sometimes more early season insects as well. We want to talk today about how to solve those problems and if it's even necessary to solve those issues.
So let's start with the disease piece. And when we think about wheat, one of the challenges of this crop is we don't have enough disease tolerance built into the genetics.
Yeah, but that said, we do have fungicides that are systemic in that plant for seed treatments. So it all begins with the seed treatment. And yes, you can get by without a seed treatment if you're in a really dry area. But the problem is, in some years when you actually have moisture, you may give up more yield than what that seed treatment cost for the next 5 years. That's often what we see with these seed treatments in wheat is, hey, I gained nothing, I gained a bushel, I gained almost nothing, then I gained 5 or 6 bushels. So that's just kind of the way it goes. So you have to weigh that out on your own farm. And hey, if you're great at predicting the weather and you can say, you know what, we're gonna have a drought this year, I'm not gonna have any rain for a month, fine, go with no seed treatment. But otherwise, you're really taking a lot of risk there. And I would say we've got a lot better seed treatments today than what we did even 10 years ago. And so when we start talking about early season diseases and insects, it really starts with that seed treatment. If you want to protect the seed and the young seedling, don't forget you're protecting the young seedling, not just the seed, then usually these things are a pretty good investment.
All right, well, by herbicide timing, we've got a decent sized plant and you aren't going to get tremendous protection from your seed treatment fungicide. So I don't want you thinking, hey, I put a seed treatment on, I'm good for quite a while here. No, you're good for a little while as that plant's getting started. Now when it's about herbicide timing, this is a great time to get out and protect that crop with an early season fungicide. As far as product selection goes, I'll just say this, if you're using the same fungicide that you used 5 years ago, you're probably making a mistake. Not because those fungicides are terrible, but there's been such a reduction in prices, there's been many more generic products that have been introduced into the market. There are just a lot more choices, a lot more options right now that you didn't have 5 years ago. Also, I think you're going to get great protection. Many times we're seeing a strobel urine type product put with a triazole. So we do like the combination fungicides, just don't get carried away thinking they're way better than they really are.
All right, whether you should use this early treatment or not really comes down to return on investment. And here's the way I look at the whole thing. Hey, if I only spend $1 or $2, what do I need to have to double my money? I need to have $2 to $4 back, okay? Are you really watching the yield monitor that close? Are you really weighing out strip trials so you know if I have a bushel gain or less from that seed treatment? Okay, so rather than doing the generic tilt in a lot of cases, what we would suggest to you is a strobe. So Headline has been really good. That's come down a little bit in price. You'll see it come down a lot more in price in the future because that's coming off patent here in 2016. So we already have generic Quadris that you can get for under $4 an acre for a half rate. Usually people are talking half rates because we're talking small plants. They need a small dose of fungicide and they'll be just fine.
All right, let's talk about the insecticide a little bit. The good thing about the insecticides is they've come way down in price versus what they were 10 years ago.
So here's what I always tell people is, look, when you're out spraying your herbicide, fungicide combination, at least have some insecticide along and scout the field. Just take a look at the field before you go ahead and spray. If you find bugs out there, you find harmful bugs, spray them. It's very inexpensive to do it, just get it over with right then. But if you're going through the field to get it all sprayed and then a few days later you realize, oh, I guess I have some bugs out there. Well, now it's too late. Now you're gonna have to make another trip. It's real easy to throw the insecticide in when you're doing these other things in the field.
All right, one last topic here, Brian, that I wanted to bring up is just scouting in general. Before you're gonna spray, scout the field real quick. See if you see some bugs. If you do, it's very cheap to throw in a product. With disease, scouting may not be the big deal.
No, you can't scout for disease. By the time you see the disease, it's too late. So if you have wetter conditions, you have varieties that are maybe a little more susceptible to disease, you've had a history of disease in the past, you have a lot of residue out there, you're in a no-till type environment, I mean, those are all conditions where you're more likely to have disease issues.
All right, there are a lot of early season issues in wheat. Stopping them ahead of time with fungicide or insecticide use can really improve your early season growth and ultimately your wheat yields. One other thing that's critical for getting high yields in every crop is controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
At Fisher Tradition Farms, we Verus all of our acres, and any new additional acres are automatically Verus. Verus maps allow us to know exactly where our soil types change and how much they change. We use AgroLiquid's Enhance, High Energy N, and Access that allows us to add sulfur. We can customize our AgroLiquid products on a per pound, per acre basis as needed.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
The experience from the salesman to the building crew all the way through was just pleasant and professional.
I feel that the people at Morton are my friends. I'll do anything for them because I felt they met that with me.
I wouldn't have anybody build me a building other than Morton. I wouldn't even consider anybody else.
It pays to go look around, but by far Morton's got the best building and we're just so pleased with it.
Contact Morton Buildings today during our Building Value Days sales event. Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
When it comes to micronutrients, one micronutrient is quite a bit different than the others. It's boron. It's actually an anion, so it has a negative charge, which means it can leach down through the soil, much like nitrate can.
Well, I don't know if I go quite that far. It's not going to leach nearly as quickly as what nitrate will. So I kind of think of it more like sulfate. So it is going to leach. You do need to apply it every year for pretty much every crop. In most cases. Just understand with boron, we've got to have some boron out there, and I know it doesn't take a whole lot. You can look on the Ag PhD fertilizer removal app, you can look up any crop, even high yield goals, and you say, what? I only need 1/10 of a pound for a whole acre for a year? Why are you guys even talking about it? Well, that's what we want to get into today.
All right, so when we think about boron, we probably don't think very much, right? Well, gosh, that isn't a big nutrient for me. I think about NPK and maybe sulfur. Those are the big ones that I'm applying, and maybe I'll use a blended micronutrient product. Okay, why are you doing that, and why do we need this boron? It's so critical for many things. Let's talk about soybeans to begin with. And I realize soybean fertility, you're probably like, well, what are you talking about? I'm going to rely on carryover fertilizer for my corn. If you're thinking that way, please soil test before you plant soybeans next spring. This is a critical thing. We have to have good fertility to have high yielding soybeans. And one of those nutrients that we need just a little bit of is boron. And one of the things that we saw this year this past summer, I should say, across many farms was, hey, I didn't have as good a nodulation as I wanted. Was my inoculant not good, or what was going on? And one of the things that we saw short in those fields was boron. If you're short in boron, it's really hard to have good nodulation in soybeans. And when you think about how much nitrogen those nodules produce for the beans, it's absolutely critical for yield that we have our boron.
All right, so Darren's talking about soybeans. I really think of this as a corn nutrient. It's incredibly important for corn, for pollination, for helping fill out the ear. Even for example, if you have shriveled kernels, that basically equals, hey, I've got a problem with my boron levels. You can have better nitrogen utilization. It's just so important for that plant. Again, I realize we don't need a whole lot. So here's what we're looking for. We want you to soil test. Make sure you're testing for micronutrients, and on a Midwest Labs test, so every lab does it a little different extraction. We'll talk Midwest Labs because that's the one we use. 1.2 to 3.0 parts per million for boron. That's kind of what we're looking for. And I'll just say, hey, this last year we had a lot of these high yield corn, soybean, and wheat farmers on our own farm with plots. And that was one of the things that stood out to me. A lot of the guys were talking about, we got to get the boron levels up. So I just look at our own farm, we've got insufficient levels of boron, we're putting more boron out there. Yes, we're still doing a blended micronutrient at planting time. It's got a tiny rate of boron in, but we're broadcasting a bunch of boron. Boron will move down in the soil. We want to get our overall levels up. So yes, we can't get too carried away. You got to be a little concerned about boron. We have to have decent calcium levels in the soil before you ever start putting a whole bunch of boron on. And by a whole bunch, I mean a couple of pounds. It's no real...
That's what I'm saying. You have to be very careful. When we're talking about micronutrients, we are talking about small quantities. It doesn't take a lot, and it doesn't cost a huge amount of money in most cases to get our micronutrient levels in line. Now, certainly, as Brian just mentioned, we need to have calcium in line. We need to have the NP and K in line. That's true. But to add just a couple of pounds of boron, it's not going to break your budget, and it's not going to be a difficult thing to accomplish.
But here's the thing. If you've got light soils, like we said, this is leachable. It's not going to stay around forever. So a lot of people do a fair amount of foliar feeding of boron. A lot of these high yield guys going for bigger yields, especially with that corn. Foliar feeding, just very low rates of boron can be very helpful when you're doing some other foliar feeding. You're throwing some nitrogen out, sulfur out, those kind of things. Throw just a tiny amount of boron in. But like we say, every year I'd be thinking about boron, and I don't care what crop you're raising. The reason why is it's important to have some boron out there for pollination, for a number of different things in that crop, and it does move through the soil, so it's not going to stick around forever.
So when you're thinking about your fertility program for this season, don't forget about boron. It's very critical for a number of things going on, both in corn and in soybeans, as well as in other crops too.
Well, another thing that's incredibly important is controlling our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to do it on your farm coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is mayweed chamomile, otherwise known as dog fennel.
Dog fennel is a serious issue, especially in wheat growing areas. Seems to be a tough one. It can be a winter annual. It can also germinate in the spring. So even if you think you got the problem under control in the fall, you may have a little bit more dog fennel coming in the spring.
All right, we don't worry too much about this one with good control methods. The best product in wheat is going to be Husky. The combination there, both the Bucktrill and the HPPD component, they both have decent activity on mayweed chamomile. We also have had pretty good luck in the past with like the Addition products, Addition Broad Spec and Addition Tank Mix. Those work just fine unless you've got ALS resistant mayweed chamomile, which is starting to show up in a lot of areas. So again, we just encourage you, hey, if you've got this in wheat, to be safe, you probably better go Husky.
Yeah, and if you can't go Husky, if you've got some crop rotational restrictions to a susceptible crop, you could go straight Bucktrill, hit it on the early side. You could use even a little stronger than normal rate of Bucktrill, and that should work out pretty well.
All right, if you've got mayweed chamomile and other crops, we don't worry about it too much. What we would suggest, even in wheat, is you could start with Sharpen. You probably have some activity there. Again, I don't think I'd use an ALS pre, simply because we're worried about that ALS resistance. Going to corn, any of those combination products, things like Sure Start, Triple Flex, Balance Flex, Verdict, they'll all have some activity. It might not be perfect, but we're going to clean it up just fine post-emerge with something like Status. That would be my preference, and even throw in just a little bit of atrazine to finish it off.
In soybeans, I really like our 3 pre-program where we start with either Authority or Valor, plus some metribuzin, plus one of the yellows like a Treflan or a Prowl, depending on your tillage system. Post-emerge, you can clean it up with Roundup or Liberty and Roundup or Liberty crops.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, mayweed chamomile or dog fennel. Stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Presenting the new 2016 Apache sprayer.
It was very smooth driving down the road, and especially in the field. The visibility is just excellent in it. The wide panoramic view is very beneficial in getting accurate spraying done. I've done a lot of shopping, I've done a lot of price comparing. I could see right away that for what I was getting in this machine versus the competition, this machine will do anything and everything any competitor's machine will do, and it'll definitely help my bottom line at the end of the year.
For lower costs, higher production, Mantico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mantico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit manticoagri.com.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
Compaction created during planting leaves thousands of dollars of potential yield in your fields. Copperhead Ag has developed the Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheel to close the seed trench more effectively. With a unique combination of closing power and control, the Furrow Cruiser provides earlier, more even emergence and higher stand counts, returning yield potential and putting profit back in your pocket. For more information on why you should never run a traditional closing system again, visit copperheadag.com.
We have a school and a church nearby.
I actually go to the classroom to educate the students about what's going on here on my farm. The system that I have, I tie everything together. No-till, cover crops. We applied AgriLiquid in furrow with our soybeans this year. It seemed like they jumped out of the soil, even though we had the record rainfall. I really feel that I'm feeding my plant on a consistent year-round basis throughout the growing season.
With the success of the Case IH Tiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
More farmers across the country are looking for ways to add planting time applications outside the furrow for a variety of reasons. I'll address this in today's Iron Talk. First, soybeans and some other crops simply can't tolerate much fertilizer in the furrow. Even moving 2 inches to the side and 2 inches below the seed, you can put a pretty good load of fertilizer on without creating a stressful environment for the seed. Second, some products you may want to use, like biologicals, may not be compatible with the fungicides or insecticides you're already putting in the furrow. Whether they create plugging issues or just work against each other, by placing them in 2 different spots, you can utilize the full strength of both products that you want to use. Third, you can only put so much fertilizer safely into the furrow, even with a crop like corn. In fact, on our farm in 30-inch row corn, we never want to put more than 5 pounds of salt in the furrow. That equates to just 3 gallons of 1034O. By adding the option of putting more fertilizer off to the side of the row, you can now put on as much as you need without risking injury to the seed. Of course, you could switch to a safer product than 1034O, but you still shouldn't put more than 5 pounds of salt in the furrow on 30-inch row corn. For these reasons and more, farmers across the country are taking another look at adding the capability of utilizing a 2x2 placement. The returns in soybeans may be enough to justify the system, but the flexibility it gives you in corn as well is a nice fit. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
Well, that's our time for today, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM Channel 147 at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
A healthy soil helps to keep our air and water clean while providing a medium for productive crops, pastures, and shelter belts. It takes good management practices and care to accomplish this. To learn more about how farmers are improving the health of their soils, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.